Let's discuss the most important position in fantasy football, running backs. In this video, we'll take a look at 5 RBs who are major values right now in drafts. Translation, they are going too late, and you'll want to take them if your goal is to win your fantasy football league. And it starts right here with the Pittsburgh Steelers draft, where they had 7 draft picks and it spent exactly 0 on the running back position. And if we were to scroll through the Steelers free agency moves, you would realize that they did not sign any running backs either. Now, this all matters because it makes Naji Harris a must draft in 2023. Naji currently goes in round 4 of drafts after being a first round pick last year, and he's taken around Jahmyr Gibbs, a rookie, Travis Etienne, and Kenneth Walker, which is odd because Naji saw great opportunity last year. 11th in running backs and snaps, top 10 in opportunity share. That's his percentage of running back targets and touches. And it breaks down even further to him being top 5 in running back carries. He was still seeing heavy usage, and that's not all. Because if we go back to the Steelers draft, you'll notice they added some help for Naji. Their first overall pick, number 14, Broderick Jones out of Georgia, a tackle. That's going to help the running game. Their 3rd round pick, Darnell Washington, also out of Georgia, is known to be an elite blocker. He's a massive tight end. That helps Naji. And we can keep going because in free agency, they signed 2 offensive linemen, the big one being Isaac Sumalo, who signed a 3-year deal to leave another Pennsylvania team in the Eagles to join the Steelers. This is all helping with 4 new linemen brought in for Naji Harris. And now one more thing. Naji last year ranked just 52nd in running back efficiency. His yards per touch wasn't great. But this might be a big reason for that. He played most of 2022 injured. In August, he actually had a Liz Frank sprain, which affected him for almost the entire year. He had to play with a plate in his shoe. And then in November, towards the end of the year, when he's finally getting healthy, he has an abdominal strain, and he's dealing with that for the rest of the season. So yeah, these injuries are going to clearly affect his explosiveness and his ability to break tackles after contact. He's a must in round 4. Now what you're looking at is the Patriots draft, and the rumor was they would definitely take at least 1 running backs. But if we scroll through here, they had 12 draft picks and they spent 0 on the running back position. And they added just 1 back in free agency, and that's James Robinson. And it wasn't anything crazy. Robinson signs a 2-year deal worth $4 million. This is average to below average backup RB money. And it makes sense because he's not that good of a running back. Just 66th in efficiency last year. Yes, he dealt with injury to open the year, still recovering from a previous season injury. But in James Robinson's big undrafted rookie season, Leonard Fournette was cut. Raekwon Armstead didn't play because of COVID. He kind of had all the stars aligned, and even then he wasn't efficient. He just had a lot of touches. Now, all of this is fantastic news for Ramandre Stevenson, and here's what you need to know. Ramandre was quietly great in 2022. He was quietly 3rd in running back targets. He had nearly 1,500 total yards, and he was 7th in yards created. That's his ability to break tackles and do stuff on his own. Now, here's the crazy part. He did this on just 65% of the snaps, and even more important to look at, he did this on an opportunity share that ranked just 16th in the NFL. He's going to see even more opportunities this year because now Damian Harris has left and signed a 1-year deal with the rival Buffalo Bills. And Harris leaves behind nearly 12 opportunities per game, which Ramandre is going to see a bulk of those. Because this is the Patriots running back depth chart, and behind Stevenson, there's not a lot to worry about here. We already talked about James Robinson. He's not all that efficient. Pierre Strong was a rookie last year. He looked talented, but he's undersized and has just 10 career rush attempts. And then the only other guy worth mentioning is Kevin Harris, who actually didn't make the team last year. He was a rookie and he was cut, and he's basically a smaller, slower, less explosive Ramandre Stevenson. You've got to consider Ramandre a must in round 3. He goes around guys like Travis Etienne and Jahmyr Gibbs and even Breece Hall. He is definitely, Stevenson, the healthy one here, definitely somebody who I would take over all these guys. He is a borderline top 5 running back to me. And speaking of top 5 running backs, let's go over to Dallas where we'll talk about Tony Pollard, who currently goes as the running back 7, and he goes in round 3 behind guys like Nick Chubb, Chris Olave, and right next to Devonta Smith. Give me Pollard over all of them, and let's talk about it. Now, despite only playing 50% of the snaps last year, Pollard was 8th in points per game, 5th in yards per touch, and 2nd in running back receiving efficiency. And here's more good news. Pollard really doesn't have any competition as it stands right now. Ezekiel Elliott was set to be a post-June 1st release, so he's set to be released. Ronald Jones was signed to a 1-year deal for $1.2 million. Ronald Jones only has 18 touches since 2021, and the only player they drafted was a late 6th round pick with the 35th pick in the 6th round, Deuce Vaughn. And this is probably most likely because their coach is Deuce Vaughn's dad. There's probably a big connection as to why he was taken so late, because Vaughn, although productive in college, and let's make this clear, way better at football than I've ever been, well, he's an undersized running back at just 179 pounds, and let's be honest, a 6th round, late 6th round pick is probably no threat to Tony Pollard. But let's keep this in mind. Zeke can still re-sign after June 1st just for less money, which helps the Cowboys. But all of their moves this offseason and their actions have shown that Pollard is the guy. And even if Zeke re-signs, I'm not too concerned because last year he had no juice, a career worst year in efficiency, 55th in yards per touch, 62nd as a rusher on the ground, not great. And now Tony Pollard has actually started 3 games in his career. And what has he done in those games? You can see right here, 28.9 fantasy points per game, and his total yardage is over 135 yards per game. An absolute alpha. Obviously, the more starts, he's not going to sustain this, but he knows how to produce per touch. Simply put, consider Tony Pollard in round 3 one of the best values in all of fantasy football. Now we take a look at the Bucs draft, and they had 8 total draft picks if we scroll a little bit here. And out of these 8 draft picks, they spent 0 on running backs, but they were active in free agency, kinda. Now that activity doesn't actually mean that they were signing a bunch of guys. They cut Leonard Fournette. They did sign Chase Edmonds to a 1-year deal worth just $1 million. Basically, he could be cut as well. And Giovanni Bernard retired. So they have a whole new backfield this year, except for one key player. And that would be Rashad White, who is now the clear-cut running back 1 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he has basically no competition. This is the rest of the running backs as it stands right now in the Bucs backfield. You have Chase Edmonds, who's coming off of a career worst in efficiency and is now 27. Keyshawn Vaughn has done nothing for the 3 to 4 years he's been in the NFL, and Patrick Laird is basically just a special teams captain. Meanwhile, Rashad White, as a rookie last year, showed enough to prove that he could be the guy this year, averaging 11 opportunities per game. And one spot where he stood out was his receiving ability. He was 12th in targets, 10th in running back receptions. He was out there a ton, even with Leonard Fournette being on the team, and that's because he was one of the best, if not the best, rookie running backs coming out last year as a receiver. Fun fact for you, in college, his final year at Arizona State, Rashad White led his team in both rushing and receiving yards. He was the running back 1 and the wide receiver 1. And here's some more good news. Dave Canales, the new offensive coordinator from Seattle, he already loves Rashad White. Unprompted, he went on a tangent about how much he loves Rashad White and how he saw him dominate them and get all physical against the Seahawks last year. And he said he's got some great skill sets that really fit into our system this year and will help our QB. White started 2 games in 2022 and averaged 22.5 touches per game, 107 total yards per game, and 15.2 fantasy points per game. And maybe the production doesn't sustain at that high of a level, but he'll have the opportunity to, and you don't have to pay for that high of a level because he currently goes in round 7 around Brandon Cooks, Gabe Davis, Deshaun Jackson. Give me Rashad White here. And there's another running back that I really am interested in because he was a sneaky offseason signing. But before we get to him, let me tell you about the fantasy blueprint. The question is pretty simple. Do you want to win your fantasy league, beat your friends, and take home a fantasy championship? Well, then this blueprint is for you. And it is 100% risk-free because if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I will refund your payment for the blueprint. 99.9% of people didn't need that refund last year because they were in the playoffs. And it's really easy to get it. You just click the link in the description below and follow the 2 simple steps on the screen, and then I will email you the blueprint with weekly updates all the way throughout your fantasy playoffs to the championship game. That's right. This is a risk-free offer that helps you not just prepare for your draft, do the draft itself, but also helps you every single week of the year. Check it out. Not now, but right now, link below. Now, let me set the stage for you for this final running back. It is not Javonte Williams, but we have to talk about him because last year in 2022, week 4 against Vegas, he tore multiple ligaments in his knee, a similar injury that J.K. Dobbins had. And this is important because this injury takes on average 15 months to recover from. Dobbins was on the early end and it took him 13 months. So if we do the quick math there, at best, Javonte, who injured his knee in week 4, is going to miss 6 to 8 weeks at best. And Sports MD Analysis on Twitter basically kind of says everything I was just saying right here. He's a great follow, so check him out. What he says that was a big takeaway at the end here: expect to see glimpses of the stud in late 2023. So full explosiveness might not even come back all year, and if it does, it's going to be late in the season. So this leaves a major question. Who's the Broncos running back for the first half of the season? I'm glad you asked. Because the guy we talked about earlier in Chase Edmonds, he used to be in this backfield, but he was actually released on March 10th by Tampa Bay. And the Broncos had 5 draft picks, only 5 this year, not a lot of picks, and understandably so. After drafting Javonte in round 2 last year, they spent 0 draft picks, 0 draft capital on the running back position. But they did sign one key running back in free agency, and this man's name, a veteran out of Oklahoma, Samaje Perine. And Samaje's deal is pretty dang good for a running back. 2 years, $7.5 million, almost $4 million per year. That's well above the average backup money, and it likely implies they're giving him this much money to be the guy for at least half the year in 2023. So that's good news for us fantasy players, seeing as we could have a starting running back here as a nice value. But is he reliable? Well, here's what you need to know. Samaje Perine started 3 games last year for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is via the RotoViz splits tool, and in those 3 games, he averaged 23.7 fantasy points. And when you take his receiving yards of 45, his rushing yards of 65, 110 yards on 21 touches. He was a clear workhorse and he produced. And coaches love Samaje Perine for two big reasons. The first one, he can pass protect, and the second one is for this column right here. His fumbles over the last 5 years, he has 0, 0, 0, 0, and 0. The only time he fumbled was his rookie year where he had 2, giving him 2 career fumbles. So he can pass protect, hold onto the football, be productive. Yes, he's a coach's dream, and that's not all. Because his competition as it stands right now is not tough. Javonte Williams is injured like we said. Tyler Batty is there, who's an undersized second-year player with 2 career touches. And Tony Jones, we have 3 years now of Tony Jones being the 90th best running back in the NFL over that time in terms of yards per touch. 90th best out of 32 NFL teams. Not so good. Samaje Perine currently goes in round 11 right now as a running back 37 around Khalil Herbert, Rashad Penny, Damian Harris. I want Samaje over all these guys because as of right now, he's the only guy with a clear-cut path to start. So these are 5 running backs that you need to draft right now if you want to win your fantasy football league. You can honestly probably get 3 or 4 of them in the same exact draft. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see the rookies that you should be drafting this year to win your fantasy league, well, check out this beautiful video right over here. And if for some reason you're still not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the latest content that will help you smack around your buddies this fantasy season.